Good morning, good day and good evening everybody, and a very happy 8th of December to all of you. I am Michael, this is Nordic RC Visions, and this is the special Tamiya RC December calendar build. Welcome. Those of you who have been following along know that we are building the TA-02SW Porsche Turbo RSR Type 934 Jägermeister commemorative 40th anniversary Tamiya Edition. If you have been following along, we have been discussing some Tamiya stuff, some Tamiya manual stuff. We have been charging a battery, and we have gone through steps 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And we have completed this rear gearbox of the TA-02SW. For me, this has certainly been very interesting. First of all, because this is my first touring car or any other build than a buggy, I hope I said that correct, and a monster truck or any kind of truck. At the same time, it's my first TA-02 or DF-01 or any other model in the DF-01 series and the TA series. Thirdly, this is a special build because this is a special edition of the TA-02. We have installed the metal motor mount, which I am very excited about. Sometimes I just rip out the motor out again and place it on a shelf just to look at it. We have been installing the universal axles, which also is a special hub-up feature of this particular kit, and the FRP fiberglass reinforced plastic shock tower. Again, for those like me who are not very familiar with the DF-01 or the TA-02, this chassis has been, chassis has been around for quite some time, since the early 1990s. The first couple of DA-01s, the manta ray and top force, actually made it into the first 100 Tamiya cars, just like the first TA-01s did. The DF-01 is basically the buggy version of this line, while the TA series is the touring car line. The TA-02 appeared for the first time in 1993, I believe, or maybe the year just before. At that time it was actually considered a proper race car that you could race and compete with. Now it has grown into a favorite chassis of many Tamiya collectors, hence why Tamiya has chosen this particular chassis for this commemorative edition. What I particularly like about these old race touring cars and buggies is the fact that it has a diff cover, so you can quite easily get into the diff and make any adjustments and close it again without having to remove the whole gearbox or the towers or anything else. So this is a relic from the time that the TA-02 actually competed and was considered a fine race car. Today we will be proceeding to step number 12, 13 and 14, which basically is assembling the front gearbox. For that purpose we're gonna open the parts bag B. So we have completed the parts bag A, step 1 to 11, and can proceed to parts bag B. We will be using up the remaining parts of the gears, and we will be adding some of the gearbox parts for the front gearbox. The A parts, number 5, 3 and 2. So I will get all the parts ready, open the box and cut the parts, and we will proceed to step number 12. We got all the parts ready for step 12, 13 and 14. I will prepare the parts for step 12 and we'll be building the front differential gear. Step number 12 is a fairly simple operation which involves assembling the gear diff for the front gearbox. I am sure many of you who have built a kit before has built a lot of these type of gears, so I'll not go very much into how they work. Again, there's lots of great instructional videos on the worldwide net concerning the operations and functions of a differential. We got all the parts needed for step 12, the assembly of the gear differential for the front gearbox. But for a brief moment, a second or two, or probably a little longer, I just want to discuss some of the different types of grease that you will probably encounter when building Tamiya kits. So far I have encountered 7 different types of Tamiya grease on my Tamiya journey. The reason why I want to discuss these types of grease is that we have been discussing it a bit in the comment section so far in this build, and I just want to go through them. Please, I'm not a grease expert and by far, and you can always correct me in the comment section. So we got the ball differential grease. It apparently does something very good to the balls of the ball differential. We got the standard Tamiya grease, the yellow goo. It's a very light, thin grease, so you can basically smear it all over the place and make sure every teeth has an excess amount of grease, and any excess that will be just thrown into the gear box walls, and it's not very sticky and you don't have to worry about slowing up your gears with this type of grease, I believe. We got the Tamiya silicone grease, which I believe is a bit heavier or thicker than the standard yellow grease supplied in this kit. It's probably not the thickest silicone grease, so you can pretty much use it as you want to. Also this one, but maybe a little thicker, and you may have to be a little more cautious when applying it to the gears, so use a lesser amount of grease if you're encountering these silicone types of grease. You can get very thick types of silicone grease at your local RC dealer or online dealer, and it can have a great effect on differentials or any other type where you want to experiment using a little thicker and heavier types of grease. For those who have been around for quite some time, maybe a lot longer than me, this is the switch lubricant grease, which is used for the MSCs, the mechanical speed controllers of the golden days, long before I entered the hobby again as an adult. So we got 2 other kinds of grease which can be considered as the high-end types of grease. I haven't got a clue what these are supposed to do. I haven't any personal experience with these types of grease improving my RC vehicles, but apparently both the molybdenum grease and the ceramic grease are more durable, heat resistant, and so on. So a lot of times I see people who are swearing to these types of grease for all the different kinds of builds. The molybdenum grease is a black type of grease, while the ceramic grease is a white type of grease. Lastly, we got the anti-wear grease, which is as we discussed, if I can get it open, the thickest of them all and heaviest of them all and most sticky of them all. If you get these on your fingers, you are gonna spend some time with soap and water to get it off again. These are used for places where there's an exceed amount of rubbing, especially metal against the metal. A lot of people are actually also using these for their off-road vehicles. So instead of the standard grease or the ceramic grease, we can use a little amount of grease on these parts to make a limited slip effect, just like a ball differential. You can also apply a lot of grease into these and it will almost in the end lock up your diff. So for off-roading vehicles, a lot of people are using this anti-wear grease to give the car a limited slip differential. For this build, I'll just be using the standard Tamiya grease as instructed in the manual, and because it looks like the the front gearbox, also like the rear gearbox, has a special cover for the gears or the gear differential, we will be able to get the diff out very fast and change it and tune it up with other types of grease later on. But for now, we're just going to build it according to the instructions. So I'll be building and using up all parts of parts bag B and be building part 12 or step 12, 13 and 14. So we got the gear differential ready to be installed and has completed step 12. I used a lot of grease, maybe much more than some of you prefer. So my supplied Tamiya grease tube is starting to diminish, but you can always use much lesser and use much more time applying a lesser amount and more carefully onto the gears. I have a lot of Tamiya grease in store, so I just basically throw it in. Next step will be installing the gear differential. Again, supply grease to the actual gear differential and use some of the bearings and close the gearbox. Again, I recommend using more grease on the edges here so it will seal down the gearbox very nicely and prevent any dirt of getting into the gearbox. Step number 13 is complete, and we'll be concluding with step number 14, which also will be the last step for parts bag B. This step is quite similar to the step where we installed the gears in the rear gearbox, except that for idler and spur gears we now have two bevel gears with an attached counter gear, which will be spinning with the gear differential. The other propeller joint, the bevel gear, will be for the four-wheel drive transmission. Again, like the rear gifts, we are not going to use any grease for the shafts or bearings, as this is a kit supplied with full ball bearings, so any grease on these shafts and propeller joint are not needed. Of course, we're gonna grease down the actual gears themselves. That concludes step 12 to 14, and it concludes day 8 of the Tamiya RC December calendar build. Now we actually have something that's starting to look like a TA-02. Today's Tamiya greetings goes to Pete Wiley RC Videos. Thanks a lot for learning me how to say chassis, or how you prefer it, chassis instead of chassis. So I've learned a good deal of English and been practicing my spoken and broken English, and I wish you a very happy 8th of December and a very nice weekend. I'll see you tomorrow or whenever you choose to tune in. Happy hobby days to you all, and take care.